Welcome to the Sens Spotlight Podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. Before we get started, bet the beauties with Betway and scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and download the app. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Also, for YouTube listeners, please hit the hype button. That helps us out. Like and subscribe. Today, we are joined by Pierre McGuire. It's been a tough couple days in Ottawa, from Brady Tkachuk getting hurt to a terrible showing last night against the Buffalo Sabres, who seem to be Ottawa's kryptonite. So we're going to discuss it, and should be a good show. Hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, bursts the speed, gets a shot, and we score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are joined by Pierre McGuire to dissect last night's Senators loss 8-4 to the Buffalo Sabres. Pierre, just what were your thoughts about that pretty tough loss from the Senators?
The start was good. Even though they fell behind 1-0, the start was good, but something that's got to get fixed. And you and I talked about it, Alex. It's really important, the penalty killing. Buffalo goes a perfect 3 for 3 on the power play last night. That's not nearly good enough. It's clearly an issue for this organization right now. It's got to be driving Nolan Baumgartner and Travis Green nuts. Those are the two guys really involved with the penalty kill. And you know Daniel Alfredson as well as I do. Daniel was a tremendous defensive player and a really good penalty killer. And I know he's in charge of the power play, but this has got to be driving him cuckoo as well. This team is much better than what their record is on the penalty kill. They're going to have to look at the dynamic that they're playing with on the penalty kill, playing a diamond. It's not working for them right now. And the other thing, too, is there was a turning point in that game. And I don't know if you agree with me, but I'm going to throw it out there. They go ahead 2-1. Buffalo challenges. Buffalo loses the challenge. It's 2-1 for Ottawa. You're on the power play. Calm, cool, and collected. Don't get lazy. Don't cheat the game. They cheated the game. They gave up a shorthanded goal, and the wheels fell off. And that was the game.
Oh, it's funny. I was talking to Julian McKenzie and Graham Nichols on a different chat and just like texting. I was like, that's what changed the complete dynamic. So, Pierre, you and I are completely on the same page. And I'm curious from you, just from the PK perspective, because I think they're at 52% right now. They gave up 3 last night. How difficult is it as a coach to change your formation midway through? Because this diamond didn't work last year and it's not working this season. How difficult is it to make that change?
I coached in a league when we would change from game to game, and we were really good on it. We won 2 Stanley Cups, but we would change game to game just based on – so back in those days, you had to worry about guys like Al McInnes, who could really shoot the puck. When you would go to New York, you had to worry about a guy like James Patrick or Brian Leach. You know, when you go to Chicago, you had to worry about Chris Chelios. There were different guys around the league. When you went to LA, you had to worry about Robbie Blake on the back end. So you had to tailor-make where you wanted to establish pressure points. And I remember one night we went into Calgary, and they had Gary Suter and Al McInnes on the back end. And they had a pretty good front end, too. I mean, you talk about guys like Joe Nieuwendyk and Joey Mullen, you know, pretty good. Gary Roberts, pretty good power play guys. Poplinski would jam the net. And I remember saying to Bobby Airy once, who was a great winger for us in Pittsburgh, really, really dynamic winger in terms of playing defensive penalty. I said, Bobby, we're going to try to do this, and we're going to try to angle Suter to move the puck to McInnes. And as soon as he moves it, you go close a gap on him. And he says, I'm going to do it, but let me tell you something. If I don't close it fast enough, he's going to rip my leg off with that shot. So every game we were doing it. So the point is, it's not that hard to do. You have to have a captive audience, and you have to make sure the players understand your message.
Yeah, I completely agree, Pierre. And to me, like, I would never coach in the league. I don't think I ever will. So I don't want to be too forceful in my critique as if I know better than the coaching staff. But in my perspective, they are too passive. I think that's the biggest issue. And they give up too much time because of the diamond, where guys like Jason Zucker comes down, walks right into, wide open into the slot. Like, that just can't happen, right? You're going to get beat on the PK. Like, good teams are going to score on you. It's the name of the game, but you can't make it easy. And I feel like time and time again, Other teams get great chances over and over and over again. And I think it's because they're too passive. They give the best players in the world too much time, and you're going to get burned.
No, and that's well said. And that's a message that players can understand. And, most players don't want to be passive, Alex. They want to be aggressive. That's their nature. That's how they made it to the NHL. There was something they did that was really, really unique. They were either really fast, they were really big, they were really skilled, they could really shoot the puck, but they always did one thing that the other kids couldn't do. They could be aggressive. And I don't think NHL players like to sit back and be passive. I remember going into Jersey when I was coaching, or going into Dallas when I was coaching, and Hitch was in Dallas, Jacques Lemaire was in Jersey, and they played passive resistance hockey. And it was winning, but it was winning because I had the red line as a boundary. You couldn't do that in today's game. Guys would mail it in on you. But here's the thing. You always heard subtle complaints from the player saying, I'm not comfortable doing this. I want to get aggressive. I want to go hunt the puck down. I want to force the other guys into turnovers. I think when you're aggressive on the penalty kill, you frustrate the star players in the other team because they love time and space to make plays.
Mm-hmm.
Take the time and space away, Alex. It's no fun for them. And that's the biggest thing about penalty killing. Make it uncomfortable for the guys on the power play.
And I think because it's that diamond, in essence, you're giving time and space to the opponent, right? You're trying to stay in the right position rather than hunt the puck. And I think at the end of the day, I think in today's game with the speed skill, I don't want to be too much of a broken record, but I think it's, as you talk about aggression. I don't think it's the players letting the PK suffer as much as it is the formation and the way it's being used. I think if you look at Shane Pinto, you look at Michael Amadio, Ridley Gregg, you watch them, how they forecheck, how they compete for pucks. They're not bad defensive players. They're very good ones, right? Mm-hmm. So in essence, it shouldn't be that the PK is last or second last in the league right now. That they don't have the personnel to match up to what's happening. And I think when that happens, you have to look squarely on the formation, the coaching, and it's 4 games. I don't think they're going to be 50 at 52% for 82 games, but at the end of the day, it needs to change. And with that, they also haven't been bailed out by their goaltending. Just maybe what were your thoughts on last night's game? A lot of people are getting on Marolainen. It was his first game of the year, gives up 7. Obviously, I think as Travis Green said post-game, you can't be that good if you give up 7 if you're a goaltender. Just what were your thoughts about the way he played?
Well, a couple of those were empty netters, so I'm going to be fair to the goalie too. I thought Levi could have been a lot better on the first one. The power play goal by Quinn, he lost his crease. He really didn't know where he was. He didn't know the board or the glass system in Buffalo, which is very active. So that's a young kid mistake. When it comes off the glass and the boards and it bounces off his back and goes in the net. If he's a more established goalie, he knows how to track that puck. He's aware because he's aware of the board system in Buffalo. So I think that's one corrective criticism, and that's on Justin Peters to make sure they go over the tape the next time they play there, no matter what, whomever's in goal. You got to be aware of this in this building. It's like in the old Joe Louis. Whenever you went into Joe Louis Arena, those boards were like rubber bands, and you had to tell your players, if you go in indirect pass in our own zone, the puck's going to come out faster. So you got to make sure when you're supporting on the inside, you're really supporting. You got to get there. If not, it's going to be a turnover. So that's part of what ailed Levi last night, I think, number one. Number two, he looked off the angle on one of the shots by Zucker. I didn't like – he looked small in net, and I know Levi Marolainen pretty well as a player, and he usually, when he's on his game, he looks stout, he looks big. He didn't look like that last night, so that was a bit frustrating. And for whatever reason, Alex, and you're around the team, he looked like he didn't communicate very well with his defenseman.
No.
And I was concerned about that, especially when you consider – they've got some veteran guys back there. Thomas is a veteran guy. Jake's a heck of a player. We all know that. Tyler Cleven. You go around, look at all that. Spence had a big night last night. Spence had 3 assists. I know that, they're not worried about the points. They're worried about the D. But he didn't communicate with those defensemen. I didn't like that part of his game.
Yeah.
Didn't like it.
Yeah. And I find over the past year watching Allmark, I wouldn't say he's been great just at handling the puck. It doesn't feel like they have chemistry. So I don't know what to make of that, right? Because it's those little details, right? And I think, as you said to open the show, if they don't give up that second goal on the PK, I think it's a completely different game. It felt very much like a turning point, like this Jake Sanderson no goal against Nashville, right?
Good point.
In different ways, right? The Sens scored, but it really felt that completely flipped the game, and then bang, 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 and I thought Thomas Chabot had a pretty tough night. I think was it the third goal where he goes to give Maryline the stick again. Communication doesn't take the guy in front.
That's the one that stood out to me, Alex. The one, and to his credit, Gary Galley, who worked the game that I watched on TV, because I know there are a couple other feeds, but I watched the Canadian feed, and Gary actually made the point, like, "Whoa, what's Chabot doing? He's going to get the stick for the goalie, but then he leaves his guy alone in the slot." And Gary, to his credit, knew exactly where Chabot was because Gary played defense too. So I thought that was a nice comment by Gary, his appropriate comment.
For sure. I guess, like, how concerned are you by the start? Because from my vantage point, they played some pretty good hockey, but it seems like just a ton of self-inflicted wounds.
So I like what you said, and I'm just going to go back to games are 60 minutes long, and you can't play 20 and then take 10 off and then play another 20 and still have 10 left to play, and you play that last 10 disjointed. 5 is positive, 5 is negative. It's really important to play 60. I know people say that all the time, but I'm not seeing this team play 60 right now, number one. Like, go back to their first and only win in Tampa. They fell behind in that game. They didn't play 60. They did not play 60. And the guy that got him and brought him into the fight is no longer playing for the team, Brady. I'm telling you, you could see last night. That's why I brought it up to you right away, and I was so glad you agreed with me. The turning point was when they get the shorthanded goal by McLeod, you could see the team just felt sorry for itself. You could see they just felt bad, like, oh, woe is me. If Brady's on the bench, that's not happening. He's either kicking someone's derriere or he's yelling at somebody. That's just how it works. And they need to – now, I don't know where Claude is on that. You talked about all the penalty killers. Claude Giroux is an aggressive guy. Claude Giroux is not afraid to talk. He's not. You know that. I know that.
No, he's not.
He's not afraid to talk. So I think this is where Claude's value to the team becomes enhanced. He's almost got to take over that role that Brady had. I really believe that.
Yeah, no. And I think what you said was a really good point about how woe is me. And that was basically how this team played for many years, right? Yep. They would go ride the waves. If they're winning, everything's great. If they're losing, everything's the end of the world. And I remember last year, a lot of when they got out of the rut, they started inching into a playoff spot. They were playing much more even keel hockey. They'd go down, they'd be fine. They'd go up. They hadn't won the game, right? And it feels like right now, the Sanderson goal, they lose that momentum and then they kind of fall away, right? That happens against Buffalo. They give up a shorty and the puzzle pieces dominoes kind of fall apart, right? And so I think right now the team needs to be even. And it's curious because it felt like this group learned that last year. And maybe without Tkachuk, that's the issue, or that's going to be even harder for this group. But it's weird. I outside of the Florida game, I've actually thought they've played 3 pretty good games, but just 10-minute stretches or 3-minute stretches, and that's how they lose, right?
And that's why I'm telling you, it's a 60-minute deal. One other thing I'm a little concerned with, and it's not my job to talk to him, so I'm not going to be involved, but I will say Timmy Stutz is a star player. Timmy's a star player. And when you're a star player, there's a lot of scrutiny on you. And you can't – we talked about it the other day. You can't miss the net when you're coming down a wing. You can't miss the net when you're 12 feet away. You can't bury the puck in a player's chest when you're 5 feet away. He's way better than that. And for whatever reason, I know he got the deflection goal last night off the point. I think it was Zetterlund that shot the puck.
Yeah.
But Timmy's got to be harder in scoring areas. I like the deflection, but it was unimpeded. There was nobody there checking on him. I want to see him fight through traffic and create more opportunities for himself. And when he gets a chance to finish, because I know how good this guy is, and I'm a huge fan. I think the world of this young man. I'm telling you right now, he's a winner. Timmy's a winner, but they need now with Brady out, they're going to need more. And I know it was his first game back. Drake's got to be better. Drake has to be better. He was not good last night. And I'm like you. I want to give him a chance because obviously it's a first game for him coming off an injury. But those are two guys with Brady gone. And I know we talked about this before, so I want to be transparent to the audience. When you start talking about a player, well, we're not sure. It could be 4 weeks. It could be 6 weeks. Trust me, it's going to be on the long side. It's not going to be on the short side. And so I think Brady, if Brady has surgery, he's looking at, I'm telling you, maybe most of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but I would be surprised if he doesn't have surgery at this point from what I've heard. And if he does have surgery, I think it's 2 months. It could be longer than that. Like, I think for him, it's almost, can you be ready for the Olympics? Obviously, Sens are top of mind, but I think that's going to be the big decision maker in terms of he needs to be back for then, I'm sure, in his mind. So I think the issue for this team is you're already behind the hay ball. You're missing your most important player now for a long portion or a big portion of the season, right? And to me, I wrote this at sportsnet.ca yesterday, is good teams find a way to win without their best players. Look at Florida. No Tkachuk, no Barkov. They're fine, right? And now this is the ultimate test for the Ottawa Senators. Are you a good team? Can you withstand your best player being out for a long time? Because I think on paper, and I don't know if you agree with me, I think this team's good enough to survive Tkachuk and make the playoffs. For, if he's out for 45 games, I still think they're good enough to make the playoffs. But right now, they're not showing themselves to be that team. So I guess how real is it that this is almost the ultimate test for this team right now without Tkachuk?
This is the first big test they faced in a long time. Because last year I wasn't concerned about them. I really thought they were going to make the playoffs. I really did. I thought it was their time. And Brady was really rounding into form, and Timmy had a phenomenal year. And then obviously the trading of Josh. I think when they traded Josh, honestly, it got everybody's attention. Josh was a popular guy there. And then all of a sudden they made it. And I give Stevie Stais a lot of credit on this. You don't always want your players to be comfy cozy. And I think all those guys were comfy cozy. Ottawa's an awesome place to live. They get treated really well by new ownership. They're really comfortable in their skin. The fans treat them fantastically well. You don't hear a lot of booing there. You don't hear a lot of booing in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
But, the biggest thing is guys have to elevate at key times. And I saw that last year. And now it comes down to Drake. It comes down to Timmy. I think Tommy Shabbat has to take his game up another level. You don't have to worry about Jake. Jake's good. I told you this a few months ago, and I mean it, Alex. I'm really concerned about the right side of their defense. I still am. I'm going to be concerned about it until they go out and address it. I think they have to. As much as they're going to miss Brady, I think they got to address the right side of that D, and they need to have meetings with Stützle and Batherson. Those two guys got to elevate. Yeah. They really do.
I completely agree. I think what you said about Stützle was really on the nose. I feel, and I don't want to go back too much to what I said a couple shows ago, but he needs to be simpler. He needs to play direct, go to the front of the net, not try to make dazzle kind of around the perimeter. Just shoot, make a play, go hard to the net, because he has the speed, he has the shot, he has the skill. But I think he tries to force it too much. He tries to make everything perfect. And that's just not how you win in the game of hockey. Even like Connor McDavid would tell you, I know he wrote for Mark Spector had him before the season, like, I need to shoot. I need to be more direct. Like the best player in the world with the most skill in the world is saying, I need to simplify my game, right? And I think that's where Tim Stützle, what he needs to do. And I think Drake Batherson, I thought he played well to begin the game, but that game was a weird game. I think he'll be fine. I don't know how I feel about that Cousins, Perron, Batherson line. I feel they kind of float a little bit. I don't feel they're getting to hard places, especially in their own end. I don't like them that much. That's the one line where I don't know what to do. In my opinion, I'd kind of like Giroux on that line instead. Maybe put Zetterlund, and then you put Batherson up with Timmy and see it. But I thought the Amadio, Stützle, Zetterlund line was actually pretty effective last night. Their analytics were great, but I thought they played well for the most part. Yeah. But I guess for you, like, how much do you take from Jordan Spence's game last night? Because you talked about the right side of defense. He had 3 assists, and I thought he had a pretty good game.
He did. I'm talking more about stopping power. You're going to have to stop people, especially because you're not going to be able to get in a lot of shootouts now. Without Brady there, you're just not going to. So you're going to have to – it's going to be a race to 3 every night. Whoever gets to 3 first, if you're Ottawa, you're probably going to win. But if you don't get to 3 first, it's going to be hard to come from behind. So that's going to be something to pay attention to. And we always had a theory in Ottawa when I was there, you got to get to 250 goals. If you don't get to 250, you're not. So that's an average of 3 goals a game, a little above if you do it. So if you get to 250, if you go look at last year, there were only, I think, 4 teams that made the playoffs that didn't get to 250, but they got to over 240. They got to over, so 16 teams make it. 12 of the 16 had over 250 goals. It's a good exercise to do if you're a fan of numbers. If you look at
Senators the Senators had 243 goals last year.
There you go.
Right?
Montreal, I think, was less than 250 as well. So if you look at it, I think St. Louis was less than 250, and I think Minnesota was less than 250. I think those are the 4 teams if you look at it. So anyways, long story short, that's a Mendoza line that you want to pay attention to. And for Ottawa, if you can win the race to 3 every night, and that's why I think the right defense is really important. On the left side, I think they're good. On the right side, they need to be a little bit better with stop power. In terms of Spence, I like him. I think he's a good puck mover. I think he's a good point getter. He's a player that you got to manage his minutes. If you're defending a 1-goal lead in the last 3 minutes of a game, he's probably not getting on the ice. If you're coming from behind and you're down a goal with 3 minutes to go, he's probably getting on the ice every other shift. So that's kind of how you have to manage it. And that's up to Nolan Baumgartner, who coaches the defense.
Yeah, if you're Steve Stais and you keep sliding and they lose tonight and you're 1-4 or you're 1-5 or whatever, how aggressive are you to make a move to address the right side or to try to make a move? Or do you just say, hey, we're not gonna do anything bold right now, and we're not gonna kind of be quick, have a quick reaction just because it's a bad start to the season and our captain's out?
Here's what I thought before the season started, and I'm sticking with it. I always talk about players and coaches and how they affect the outcome of the regular season and the playoffs. This is the first year that I'm not going to, and I'll tell you why. I've never seen the parity so great in the league. Look at how many teams were close to making the playoffs last year. The parity is even greater this year because we haven't had expansion in a while. So the talent bucket keeps getting raised all the time and more full all the time. So that's number one. So I'm talking about owners that aren't afraid to be bold. I'm talking about general managers that have the courage to go out and make big deals. And this is going to blow you away. I'm talking about pro scouting staffs that have to be elite. If you've got an elite pro scouting staff and you're a GM, you're going to trust the intel they're giving you. If you're a GM and you got an owner that trusts you, your owner is going to give you the financial wherewithal to go out and make a deal. This is the first time in all my years where I'm not focusing so much on the coaches and the players. I'm focusing in on who's going to make the best deal going into the trade deadline or into the middle part of the year or going into U.S. Thanksgiving. And so I'll use an example. Vegas is a good team. You know it, and I know it. But if Vegas adds Carter Hart, which it looks like they might, that changes the entire pool table. That is a complete change for the Western Conference. And so how many moves will they have to make after that? Probably not many. And everybody said, you know what? They lost Alex Pietrangelo. They could be in trouble. Even though Carter Hart doesn't play defense, that overcomes a little bit of the loss of Alex Pietrangelo. And that's just one example. They still got, I think Pietrangelo was 8.8 on the cap. So they got a lot of money left to spend.
Vegas and the cap. Yeah.
So I don't know if you agree with me, Alex, but I'll just tell you, this is the first time I've ever felt this way. Owner, GM, and pro scouting staffs are going to matter more this year than any year that I can remember.
Oh, I definitely agree. And I think in Ottawa, the problem is, as you know, they don't have their first round pick this year. And I saw some people doing the lottery balls and the Sens getting the first round pick already on Tankathon, and they don't have it, right? And I think that's the thing I feel about this team right now is, in many ways, their year to put all the chips in or to be really aggressive is next year. You have your first round pick. You'll have more cap. They have $30 million in cap space. Presuming you sign Pinto, you have a ton of money to add talent to the group, right? and you already have all your guys locked in. But this year, you don't have your first. Now you have an injury, but there's no LTIR relief. If, for example, if Brady got hurt or someone else with a high AAV got hurt, so you're really hamstrung. But at the same time, you have to make a deal. The one thing that gives me some optimism is I think Staios knows that this is a pretty win now group, not to win the cup, but to win. And the trade he made for Dylan Cousins, I think, is emblematic of how he can trade a distressed asset or a guy that you thought would be hard to trade, or make a move that you thought would be difficult, and he pulled it off. So I think that gives me a reason to believe that if everything makes sense, he'll do it. I do think they're aggressive, but they're also hamstrung. So they're kind of in a tight bind. But if I'm them, Ryan O'Reilly, Rickard Rakell, if those types of guys are available, I think you go all over it. You could trade guys on the roster with decent salary. Like, I think they have enough to make a big deal, but I don't know what you think, how aggressive and when. But I think they should, especially if the season starts really falling by the wayside.
So obviously the game with Seattle tonight matters a lot. It does matter a lot because Detroit, all of a sudden, after a terrible start to the year against Montreal on home ice, where their coach ripped them apart, Todd McClellan, after game one, they haven't lost a game since. And I watched them with their 2 games with Toronto. I thought the second game they were very fortunate that Cam Talbot played well. They were outshot 40-15. I thought Cam stood on his head. He was pretty good. But I'd be watching Detroit in the rearview mirror. I'd be a bit concerned because the expectation was they were going to be better. And I think they are better, and I think they're playing with a purpose now. And there's some guys trying to play their ways onto different countries' Olympic teams. The addition of Sandin Pellikka there is going to help that defense a lot. He's moves the puck unbelievably well. So there's some good stuff going on there. And I think, again, they've got – I know their depth chart from the East Coast League to the American League to the NHL. They've got some amazing goaltending assets, and everybody's looking for goaltending. So if I don't know what the asset will be worth, but if they were to decide to ever trade one of their young guys on goal in particular, they might get exactly what they need. So it's just, if you're Steve and you want to make the playoffs, I think people would see me that Montreal's pretty good. I think people would see me that Toronto's pretty good. You already said Florida's pretty good, and I agree with you. Tampa's not going away anytime soon. So if you're going to make the playoffs in that division, you're looking at competing with Buffalo and Detroit. Probably. I'm putting Boston down, even though Boston had a real good start so far. If you're Steve, you can't have this go much longer because you're not going to be able to make up the points.
No, you're not. We'll just make a little kind of announcement. Maybe some people saw on Twitter, but we are giving away 2 pairs of tickets to the Ottawa Senators versus Edmonton Oilers game taking place on October 21st in partnership with Betway. To enter, follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on Twitter and Betway Canada on Instagram or on Twitter as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and comment sick on this episode. So that's great. McDavid coming to town, hot ticket. So check it out and kind of subscribe, follow to the show to enter, and maybe you can get a chance to watch the best player in the world play some hockey. So it should be a fun event. Before I let you go, Pierre, just maybe what are your thoughts kind of heading into tonight's game? What do you want to see from the Senators?
A quick start. This is a Seattle team that played in Montreal on opening night in Montreal, and they played a real good game. After a tough start, I loved how resilient they were. There's not a lot of star power there, but there's a lot of veteran experience there. I would attack their defense a lot like what Montreal did later in the game, getting pucks below the hash marks in the offensive zone and grinding on their defense, drawing some penalties. But the biggest thing to me is Seattle reminds me so much of Nashville. The way they're coached. Lane Lambert worked for Barry Trotz forever. Andrew Burnett, the coach in Nashville, works for Barry Trotz now, but played for him and worked for him as well. Seattle reminds me of Nashville, really far west. So whatever you learn from the game Monday, if you're Ottawa, I'd implement a lot of it tonight when you're playing Seattle because they're very similar teams.
For sure. I think Ottawa struggles against fast teams. Seattle's fast. Nashville's fast. I still think they're the better team, but I think you're hitting on the nail. And the start to the game, Ottawa's given up the first goal in each of the first 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to win a lot of hockey games. You don't need crazy, knowledge to know that in hockey that give up the first goal, you're likely to lose. So get the first goal, get some good vibes in the building, change it up. But Pierre, thanks so much for coming on the show. Excited to talk about the game tonight, tomorrow. So thanks for joining us, and we always appreciate it.
Really appreciate being with you, Alex. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody.
Thanks to Pierre McGuire for coming on the show. You can find him at the Eye Test every weekdays at 4 p.m. And today we are joined as well by the lovely and awesome Shayna Goldman of The Athletic, just to talk a little bit about the Senators. Thanks so much for joining the show and doing this. From your vantage point, how worried or concerned are you about Brady Tkachuk? I feel like that's kind of the news of the day in Sens land.
Yeah, definitely worried because he's like everything to this team. He's such an interesting player. Like, on the one hand, I do think that the Tkachuk's, just the name branding alone, like, obviously hypes up their value, but he's someone, like, when we did our player tiers project, everybody wanted to talk about Brady Tkachuk, and
Really?
oh my God, we got so much on him, and everyone was like, you need to bump him up. He did this, look at Foreign Nations. And it was so interesting to see how Foreign Nations, like, informed so many opinions, or I guess confirmed what you already thought, right? Because here's someone we've looked at for so long, and we've gone, well, he's going to be a playoff animal, but you haven't had the chance to see it. And then he gets in Foreign Nations, he's great. Then he's in round 1 here, and he's great again. So very important player. He's like one of those unicorns too, because he's a first line guy who hits a ton, has that throwbacky vibe, and can do a little of everything. But I would say if this injury was going to happen at any time, this is it. And I know that might sound really convoluted, but it's a way for the Senators to learn to generate offense without him, which I think is a huge key to this season, because when we looked at, the preview for this year, the big question was, do they have that second layer behind Tkachuk and Stützle? And they didn't last year. That's what held them back. So now you have to learn to live without him. So then when he joins the fold again, you would assume he's just going to get back to what he does, which is generating a ton of scoring chances. So I think this is going to force everybody else to raise their game.
That's a fascinating point, just how basically this can be a kind of a pinpoint or a part of the season where everyone needs to kind of step up. And, they always say the cliche next man up mentality, but I think you're right. We're going to learn a lot about the Senators in the next however long Tkachuk is at. Who do you look at on this team as someone that really needs to step up? Like, you can say everyone, but is there someone in mind that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, I think some teams are more battle tested for that, like, next man up mentality. Like, you look at the Florida Panthers, and they don't have, Matthew. It's a Tkachuk-less NHL. It's wild, but they don't have Matthew in the lineup, and then obviously they don't have Barkov, and you're seeing that already. Not everybody is in that same position to just say, okay, no biggie, we're going to make this work. So it's a huge test for them. I'm going to look at guys like Dylan Cousins to score more, or at least generate more offense. To me, his best strength isn't his, goal scoring ability. I think it's a good strength to have. I think he's a good goal scorer, but he's so strong in transition when he's at his best, and he generates so many scoring chances off the rush, or can set his teammates up for them. And I think playing with guys, like Batherson and Perron, like, they're in the prime position. Sorry for the dog barking.
It's all good. It's all good.
They're in the prime position to benefit from that.
I guess with Cousins himself, like, how much do you think? I mean, it's been only 25, 30 games that he's been in Ottawa, new environment. Buffalo, is a tire fire, although they have the same record as the Senators. So maybe who are we to judge? But how much do you think just playing on a better team can really propel him forward? And so far he's scored on the power play, but he hasn't produced at 5-on-5.
Yeah, I mean, scoring on the power play is a big step for him, because last year the Sabres power play was so putrid. So that's like getting, one chip off your shoulder. But I think for him, it's focusing on the offense. I think in Buffalo, he got away from that a little bit, and there was such an emphasis on toughness, as if he was this fourth line grinder. I never understood the way it was discussed, and I felt like he kind of got away from his game, trying to be like a grittier player. And, like, listen, that is a great thing to have, to be tough to play against. But I also think we sometimes lose what tough to play against should actually mean, right? Not everybody is Brady Tkachuk and is going to be tough to play against in that they're hitting you constantly, but he is an effective player because he does a lot more than that, right? Like he's an effective hitter that he's, taking hits and making hits to make plays. And I don't feel like Cousins was doing that enough in Buffalo. So I think playing in Ottawa gives him a clean slate, but yeah, he needs to pick up the pace at 5-on-5. Getting the power play scoring is good when you first move to a team, I think, or when you're a new player in this league, because it's going to boost your confidence a bit. And it's going to show you like, okay, I do fit in here. And then you need to get the ball rolling and let that translate when you don't have that man advantage and when you're not out there with 4 forwards.
Why do you think the Senators team last year and this year, I mean, last year their analytics weren't great at 5-on-5, but they underperformed them. This year, like I think they're second in shots, they're 8th in expected goals, and they haven't really been scoring. Why do you think there has been that dichotomy in terms of the chances they create and in terms of the actual output in goals?
Yeah, I think last year the defensive structure kind of held them back, and it was something they needed, right? Like we saw their penalty kill was a wreck. We saw that they were really bad at even strength in years past, so they had to clean up things in their own zone. But I think sometimes when you go too far into the defensive structure, it holds you back offensively, and I think that's what hurt them last year because yes, their shooting percentage was low, and that's a big reason they didn't produce enough at 5-on-5. But the other issue was they weren't generating a ton either. They weren't, they were like a bottom 10 team in expected goals. You can't expect a team to score a bunch if that's the case. So just picking up the pace this year, I think is already, it's a sign of progress for them. They know what held them back last year. They know why they got eliminated, and that offense was a big reason why. So I think just kind of like loosening up and just firing the puck, because good things happen when you shoot the puck. Start there, right? When you're in a team like the Senators, you're in a position like the Senators are after last season. I think that has to be your mentality. Just shoot the puck, and then you can start saying, okay, now we can be a little more selective with our shots, and we can get to better areas of the ice. Having someone like Batherson back, I think will help get a little bit more finishing ability in there. But it's, there's definitely some other guys you want to see score more, because someone like Zetterlund, you look at his time in New Jersey, you look at his time in San Jose, can be great for shot volume. You need to do something with it. So like that's the next step, the natural progression you're going to have to see everyone work on. No,
you're almost saying like the mantra that Tim Stützle needs to have is just shoot, be simple. Don't kind of don't be too fancy. You mentioned kind of the player tiers that you wrote at The Athletic. You had Jake Sanderson up there as well, and he seems to be really ascending. How much of an advantage does it give a team when you have arguably the best defenseman on the ice most nights? Like how much does that affect winning? Obviously it does, but how much do you think it can be?
So other than Brady Tkachuk, we got so much feedback on Sanderson. Like he was one of, we got a lot on guys like Heiskanen, Dahlin, Sanderson, and it's this rising ability, right? Because I think we saw the last couple of years just this growth into an overall number one defenseman, like a true number one defenseman, not just a top pair guy. And that's obviously huge for him. He's such a good player who can control things in all 3 zones. And that's a huge advantage to have, right? You have someone who can get you out of danger in your own zone and can make the right plays. And more importantly, especially for this lineup, when you look at the forward group, is he's someone that can transition from defense to offense and get everything going. He's such a good puck mover. When you have someone like that kind of like quarterbacks your play, I think it can help you outperform maybe like the sum of your parts up front. You look at other teams, like McGuire is not a fair comparison because he has Nathan MacKinnon. I totally get that. But you look at someone, no one has Cale McGuire and Nathan MacKinnon. But otherwise, it's, guys like Heiskanen, and you look at the, that quiet effectiveness that he has in Dallas, or Quinn Hughes, how he makes the Canucks look capable on even their worst nights. Like it is unreal what he does. And Adam Fox is the same way in New York, where the forward group might not actually be that good, but you see these like really smart plays from him, and it completely transforms things. So I think having the best defenseman, of the matchup, or, a top 5, top 8 guy in the league, it's huge on both ends of the ice because they're the ones that can like set the tone for things.
Do you think he can ever get into that MVP type of like Norris Trophy in that conversation? Like he's really gone up like a rocket the past couple of years in terms of growth.
I think tier 1 is so hard to crack. Like literally the gap between McCarr and Hughes is less than the gap between Hughes and the next guy. So
Yeah.
that's really like guys like Adam Fox were there before and they've struggled to stay there, and McAvoy we've seen drop a bit, but I could see him getting into that 2A territory where Heiskanen and Dahlin are and be that, top 5 defenseman in the world for sure. Like I think that trajectory is there. I don't know if he'll ever get to tier 1 because that is like it's not even like elite. It's almost like all levels of defensemen. Because we only have 2 there right now. And I think it's just such a rare breed to be up there.
For sure. Yeah, Quinn Hughes. And it's funny just talking to Sanderson a couple times in Ottawa, like he's mentioned those guys. It's like, I don't know if I'll ever be as good as those 2 guys offensively, but I can kind of be as good as I can be. And I think you're right. He's probably never going to get there, but he can maybe be 2A. He can maybe be the 3rd best defenseman in the world or something like that on his best year. Linus Ullmark in Ottawa, it's been an interesting – he got them to the playoffs last year. He's had a difficult start to the season. Maybe like under the hood, like how much confidence do you have in him being an excellent, capable starting goaltender in the NHL?
I really like Linus Ullmark, and I liked him last year too. I think last year we saw him like have to work out the kinks a little bit of like taking on a new role, and then when he found his footing, he got hurt. So there were definitely some up and downs, but I think he can be the guy. It's tough because we look at some of these goalies that don't start a ton of games, right? And it used to be Swayman and Ullmark, and then guys like, right now it's Anthony Stolarz, and you go, well, can they do more? And sometimes we look at it and go, well, we assume they can't because they haven't, right? I think last year he showed, okay, he can do this. He can be a number 1. No, he didn't start as much as other number 1s in the league, and injury had a lot to do with it. But I didn't look at him and go, oh, he looks like he's shaky. Oh, it looks like, he's burnt out by the end of the year. I think that was good training for this year. So hopefully he can take it a step further. But he's just going to need the 2-way support, right? Like I don't expect him to be able to do that behind a bottom 5 team defensively. I think he has experience with that because I think we do forget about his Buffalo days before he was part of that amazing tandem in Boston. But I really think he can be like a low-key good number 1. Like he's not going to be up with the Ottingers and Vasilevskis and Shesterkins, but like who among us is? But it's a very good position when you look at him and go, okay, this is a starting goaltender and not just some 1A.
Yeah, for sure. In Ottawa, Shane Pinto's had a great start to the year. He has 5 goals in his first 4 games. He's going to be an RFA. Just from your vantage, he's on the Team USA kind of select team this summer, the 40-man roster. How much would you pay Shane Pinto if you were Steve Staios? Like, how good of a player do you think he is, and how much would you pay him as a RFA?
Yeah, I wouldn't be jumping to something massive just yet. And I think we're seeing that like exponential growth from some players. But I mean, he's a really good center. And if he can bring it offensively this year and bring it consistently, which is like exactly what this team needs, if he pushes into the $6-7 million range, like I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out because obviously in Stützle, you have like a very good number 1 center, right? And then after that, you have Cousins who's being paid like a 2C. So we're going to learn a lot, like what's the value of a 3C. Right now, I think we're getting a better gauge of like how to overpay mid-league defensemen and what top wingers are worth, right? So I don't think this center position has been recalibrated as much in this changing market as much as some other positions have. So it'll be interesting to see like what does a true 3C look like. But also, is he going to be a true 3C? Is he going to be, could he jump over Dylan Cousins if Cousins can't do everything? Like, I'm curious if they're going to be like second line center A and B. I think of it more like, and more of like a middle sixer than just a true third liner. And that's going to change the dollars and cents, right? Because if you're a 3C, something in that $5 million range makes way more sense, right? And I guess you could probably push it up to maybe 6, depending on, the structure of your team. And in Ottawa, it's not like they have the priciest wingers in the world, but, can he be what they need? And that's, obviously a pesky winger, someone who can be deployed in any situation, but can he bring it offensively as well? If he does, I don't see why he wouldn't get a significant raise because, this team needs scoring talent more than anything else. And I think you can afford to pay top 9 players more if that 4th line stays super cheap.
Is that a case in Ottawa where you have your guys signed to very, team-friendly deals in Sanderson's too, so that you can maybe afford, especially in a small market where you're not really getting free agents, that you can afford to maybe pay Pinto more than you'd like? And he has been essentially playing as a 2C, he has the toughest matchups. He plays basically as much as Dylan Cousins. Like, is that something where you're maybe more open to breaking the bank a little bit with a guy like him, rather than maybe going out and trying to replace him elsewhere?
Absolutely. And I think everyone's been kind of enjoying like dunking on the Jets for the Kyle Connor deal and the Wild for the Kaprizov deal, because they're both overpayments for what they bring to a lineup. But at the end of the day, you have to decide what you're going to overpay on. And I think teams in those positions are in a completely different field than, say, the Oilers, who, I don't know, just went back to back, for Stanley Cup finals, and like Vegas with the Eichel deal, right? Like, it's a super team friendly deal. But if you're Eichel and you're looking at it, you're going, well, this team will do whatever it takes to win. Oh, and they won a Stanley Cup in the last 5 years, and you're in like this perfect position to succeed. Not everybody has that same advantage, right? Like, if you're Winnipeg, your goodwill is that you're a really good regular season team, but you've done nothing with it. If you're the Wild, you get to round one and that's it. So the Senators are in a similar situation, because it's like, this is a team that hasn't been in the playoff picture that much recently. They're finally a part of it. Okay, you got out in round one. Like, where is this, this amazing bright future or this track record in recent years? So sometimes that does lead to you overpaying your own players. But then again, that can be the better method too, because the best way to get high-end talent is not through free agency, because top-end players generally don't make it there. And centers especially are prime candidates to get overpaid when they're 29, 30 years old, or to cost, you're going for a third-line center, say at the trade deadline, you're spending at least a first-round pick, maybe more depending on what the market demands or how many centers are available. So it gives you even more reason to keep what you have. So while it might be easy to be like, oh, this guy isn't worth X, you're like forgetting the context of the situation for the team. And I think that's so important for the Senators in particular. So if he gets slightly overpaid, but he's someone that is, one, on the younger side, two, in the right phase of his career versus someone going into his 30s, and three, what he already brings to the lineup. You're not projecting a fit, right? You're not hoping that on paper, this is the perfect person. You're going, we know he works here. We know he works really well in this role, and he's a middle six center. Yeah, it can make sense.
How much do you think the sticker shock is sticker shock versus like overpayment right now? Like, I know this isn't even like Sens specific, but like Kyle Connor, obviously Kaprizov, like, I don't know if he'll ever live up to that contract, but just in terms of guys getting paid a ton, but the cap is rising, and in 3-4 years from now, $9 million for Jackson Lacombe might not look as bad as it does right now, where you're like, oh my God, how's he getting paid more than Quinn Hughes or than Lane Hudson?
Yeah, no, it's total sticker shock, because like, do I look at Jackson Lacombe or Luke Hughes and say they're $9 million defensemen right now? No, I think they're close to it though. And I think that they're so early in their careers, like they're not even in their prime yet. Their peak is yet to come. And I think by the time they hit it, they're totally going to be that. Like, I'm not concerned at all on either contract. If you're going to spend, those are the players to spend on, versus, I don't know, like an Ivan Provorov in free agency when offering them $8 million. You know what I mean? Like, there's such a difference between that. I think that if you're going to overpay for anyone, it should be star talent. But I also think we need to recalibrate what an overpayment is. Kyle Connor, the $12 million is going to get sticker shock, because just last summer, Rantanen and Marner signed for that. And those are defensemen that are a tier apart. They are outright a tier apart. And I totally get it. But also, you think of the rising cap and what 12 million looks like next year. It's about 13 million, right? So you have to think of it like there's $1 million separating these two based on the cap hit percentage changing. Okay, so that seems a little bit more fair. But also, that's someone who, if he can keep up the play driving, and I think he can, that he brought into the, he was so much better last year below the surface, Kyle Connor, that I see a better path for him than, say, the Mika Zibanejad path that I think that was one of his top comps, right? And someone like Kaprizov, could he live up to the hype and of that contract? To me, he is a top 3 winger in this league. So if you're going to bet on any player to do it, I would say it's him. Last year, before he was injured, he would have had my Hart Trophy vote. Like, there was no doubt in my mind he was my number 1 MVP right there. That's the ability he has. And in Minnesota specifically, they need someone like that to literally electrify the lineup. So yes, I think that we're going to keep learning what top players are worth. And I think we're going to calm down on, worrying, oh, this guy makes $9 million and this. It's the context of the situation. It's what the team needs. But also, these are players with that star capability. It's better to pay them than to not.
And I don't think Shane Pinto's a star, not to make it too much about the Sens, but we are on a Sens podcast. But I do think if you look at who's maybe the top 5 or 6 players on the Senators, I would put Pinto in that category just for kills penalties on the power play, shuts down the opponent's best players. So if you give him 7-8 million for an 8-year deal through till he's 32, you have his prime years, you know who he is, he's a good player, he's really important to you, and you're not going to replace him if you trade him or let him walk. So I think in many ways it's kind of like the Kaprizov and Connor deal, to obviously a lesser extent. He is not that player at all, but that in Ottawa, signing him long term makes a lot of sense because of his role and value on the team compared to if he went to Anaheim. I'm just throwing the team out there, or wherever. They don't know him. You're going to pay him even more probably because you can't get him on an 8-year deal, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if I'm Shane Pinto, I think he's going to get paid a lot of money soon. But I also think people might not like the sticker shock, but it probably will be a decent contract for the Senators. Is there any player on this team that you're maybe hoping to or that you kind of have an eye on that maybe isn't, a star player that you think can maybe pop this season?
Yeah. Wait, so I'm Pinto. I was curious. I pulled up his comps from, I'm going to pull him up from last season. I'm super curious to see how he looks like based on his age and things like that. So we look at it like that was his, age 25 season, who's going to have similar numbers to him. And it kind of helps gauge where his career could go from here and things like that. So looking at that list, because it's loading up right now, I see names like Pajot, which is kind of funny, like to have that former Sen. But yeah, like there's some names that you go, okay, red flag, and that's like a Dave Bolland, a Troy Brouwer, a Lawson Krause. But you also have names like in his top 5, like Boone Jenner is legitimately a very good top 9 player to have, a really good utility guy, and Hurdle's on this list too. So I think you see those 2 potential career paths that it's like, okay, wait, like maybe there's something there. But to your question, someone I have an eye on this season absolutely is Jordan Spence. I don't get why the Kings traded him. Like, I get it in the sense that they felt like they couldn't trust him, and they obviously have their doubts, it seems, with Brant Clark and the minutes that he can handle. But to me, having both players is not redundant. Like, I think it's a good thing to have offensive defensemen, especially when you look at, other players in their top 6, like Mike Anderson, who's elite defensively, but that is what he does. And Doughty, who's in the later stages of his career, and even someone like Joel Edmondson, who's one-dimensional. And it's very Ken Holland-esque to be like, no, it's fine. We're going to go back 10 years and go with CeCe
Dumoulin.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's painful to watch. So he would have been really good to have there. Like, say they signed one of those guys and kept Spence, I would be like, okay, like I don't love it still, but all right. So the fact that they got rid of him made no sense to me. I think he makes so much sense for the Senators because, again, we're talking about a team that's like relatively starved for offense. Now I think you have 3 defensemen at the very least, who can generate something, right? Because Shabbat, for all of his defensive flaws, is good offensively. Sanderson is the guy. So now you have this offensive guy on the right side of the lineup, which they didn't have before, who could play on the third pair to start, maybe play more. Obviously, the big question is going to be, can he handle playing, tougher minutes? We really don't know. And sometimes guys thrive in sheltered minutes, and that is their ceiling, and that is totally okay, right? Like, every team has a spot for those kinds of players, right?
Sure.
It's not the worst thing, but sometimes if someone thrives in those kinds of minutes, it's good to like test the waters and see what they can handle. So, we'll see which direction he does go in from here, whether he can handle taking on more or if sheltered minutes are all that he can manage. But to me, he brings what this lineup needs. He's a puck mover. He adds a little bit of a spark. And I think that'll help too, because now the bottom of that forward group's going to have someone on the back end who can help get things going, because you look at the bottom 6 and there's not a ton of puck movement there. So if you can get it from the back end, I think it helps things click.
Yeah, I still was befuddled the fact that Travis Green healthy scratched him to begin the season and then put him on with Tyler Clevin when he returned. And guess what? Last night, Spence had 3 assists, was a +3. I think you hit it on the nail. Like, especially on the right side last year, they basically had like 5 goals from their right side, just from on defense. And Spence is going to bring offense for a team that needs offense. I still think defensively he's like good enough, right?
Yeah.
And I do think it's interesting. I think in the coach's mind, he's a bottom pair guy just from reading the tea leaves. I think he could definitely be a top 4 guy. Wouldn't want to play him with Shabbat. I think that's probably too much offense, but I do think that he's going to be a good player for this team. And that's maybe something, despite the poor start to the season, I think they're going to score a couple more goals without Tkachuk with Spence in the lineup. So he's going to be a very important player. Shayna, thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. Is there anything at just The Athletic that you want to plug for the listeners and viewers, just so they know your stuff, and anything else?
I have stuff coming out all the time there. I'm working on something, building up the player tiers project, which I'm pretty excited about, just about like how teams get their best players. So I think that'll be good. And that's cool. Yeah. So it goes into the Shane Pinto conversation that, like, we're talking about this stuff, and should teams overpay their own guys and things like that? Like, that's what gave the inspiration for this. So I think that one will be fun. Yeah.
I want to have a really in-depth article on Dumoulin Ceci. I'd love that thinking. It's Sens legend Cody Ceci forever. But Shayna, thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. We really appreciate it. We love your work at The Athletic, and thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.